Okay, remember, they are covertly editing my voice with 22 witnesses on record. That is 22 witnesses on record in various channels, and I have a lot of them on one playlist. This is very key because we do not pick figs from thistles, as the saying goes in the Bible, which means we don't look to the Romans, we don't look to the Jews, we don't look to the LGBT community or the military, the soldiers that mock Jesus. We don't look to these places where people who are holy would not go to serve God. Okay? That is the message of the Bible, among other things. So now, let's explain briefly why these people have failed to make it seem like I'm crazy, which is what they did in the Bible and is part of their tradition, to mock, to pretend someone's crazy, okay, to run psychological operations, to gaslight. They love doing this. It's all throughout Western history, especially in recent history. All right. Point number one. It is obvious that I am not severely mentally ill or even just mentally ill, as I have done lots of research in regards to bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and psychosis, etc. Also, I am a college graduate, and that occurred during the making of my videos. I started making videos in 2009. I graduated college in 2015. However, even if I was mentally ill, that does not mean that I'm not right about God. It does not mean that I am not that I was not driven mentally ill, and so it would not mean that I am not Christ. Okay, just because you drive, let's say they drove me mentally ill, just because they did that, it would not mean that I'm not Christ. I am, and I'm going to prove that beyond any reasonable doubt in this video. Point number two. Disorganized thinking as the result of being persecuted with 22 witnesses only means that people are slack in their duty to God. This does not mean that they should not follow me. I am the gate. People have secretaries for a reason. When one has a lot of work to organize, they tend to get disorganized. We see this happen all the time with the disorganized genius scientists. Okay, so it's common for people to be disorganized when they have something to do that has to do with a lot of information. That's why people have secretaries, and we see this with the scientists with the disheveled hair and so on and so forth. Okay, so point number three, this is going to blow them out of the water. The Martha Mitchell effect shows us definitively that there is a burden of proof on mental health in all the accusers which they cannot meet. I meet the criteria for a whistleblower and a dissenter 1,000,000 times over. And in the last 100 years, the American government and its mental health shells have totally discredited themselves. The Martha Mitchell effect is when somebody who's telling the truth is labeled mentally ill, especially as part of a cover-up. Okay. 4. I have a logical argument that shows I am Christ. It goes as follows. A. Exodus 15:3 tells us the Lord is a warrior, the Lord is his name. This shows us that we are looking for a holy, monotheistic martial arts warrior with certain African qualities when we consider who is like God. So who is like God, right? Bill Gates, Joe Biden, or someone more like Martin Luther King. But since the Lord is a warrior, and Martin Luther King was not a martial artist or warrior of any type, somebody with a pronounced warrior spirit like the top martial artist ever. We'll get into that. Pretty straightforward, right? No other way it could be. Even their movie The Lion King is based on an African king, and it's a white spirit superimposed on that in the cartoon. Why is that? Because the Lion of Judah has African qualities. Hebrew is even an Afro-Asiatic dialect. The African, aka the Afro, comes first. 8. In Isaiah 9:6, Isaiah refers to Christ as mighty God, among other things. In Isaiah 16:5, it says that he will seek and speed the causes of righteousness and justice. I fit this description to a T with my video activities and moral social activities that have taken place for decades and on YouTube alone since 2009, leading up to my 2013 challenge. I had a 2012 challenge in May and 2013 challenge in December 20th. Okay? And this year, on December 20th, it will be 9 years. Okay? Where you can earn as much as $10 million if you win, if I'm compensated, $60,000 if I'm not. And you get $50 a show, pay nothing if you lose. No challenge like this in the name of Christianity exists in human history. All right. So why weren't they smart enough and insightful enough to speed the cause of justice the proper way? The proper way in regards to God and not white racist supremacy. All right. Point C. In Psalm 89, it says that God anointed a warrior. David is obviously just a character in a story that is superimposed on the true idea. That is the logical assumption. So to do justice to the message of the story, we must first look at it as a story. What is the idea they're referring to? The idea is the spirit of a righteous warrior facing, a challenge, a single combat challenge against all odds and adversity. Okay, all the sabotage in this case. It's a David versus Goliath challenge, and that they are sabotaging me, and I still made my challenge. I still defeated all the challengers as well. And I've had countless people concede that I am the top martial artist ever. All right, especially privately, but publicly as well. D, Revelation 22:16 says that Jesus is the root and offspring of David and the bright morning star. The root and offspring. Key word here, offspring. So those who are the offspring, the spiritual offspring of the idea of single combat, okay, this idea that was put there by God, okay, is part of the spirit of Christ. But the pinnacle is the King of Kings, Christ himself. Christ come back. That spirit come back in its appropriate form. We'll get into that. E, in 1 Samuel 17:45, David argues that when he strikes Goliath down and cuts off his head, symbolic of cutting him off from God, mind you, he then says, "This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel." Why? How will they know that there's a God in Israel? Well, if you read 1 Samuel 17, you see Goliath said he defies the armies of Israel, and he says whoever overcomes, use the word overcome in one translation, overcome, at least one translation, okay, the others, okay, whoever overcomes the other will rule over that person and his people, okay? And Jesus says in the New Testament, "Take heart, I have overcome the world." And there's all kinds of connections like Revelation 19:17, which tells us when Christ comes back waging war with righteousness and justice, that there's an angel standing in the sun calling to the birds to come gather for the great supper of God. This is a direct reference to David versus Goliath, okay, because it says he's going to cut off his head and the birds and the wild animals will feed on the flesh. So they're referring to the martial spirit of that idea, okay? And he calls it the great supper of God, the great supper of God. This overkills that the essence of the combat, the essence of the King of Kings and the offspring of David is a moral warrior spirit that connects directly to natural combat for us to see who Christ is. Single combat with swords and knives is clearly the best way to see who Christ is, but as it is bloody, the most righteous way to know who Christ is, the only valid way, is outdoor sparring. It cannot fairly be done anymore, so it defaults with me as the top martial artist ever, and Jesus come back to detect breeding, cheating, and generational ill-gotten gains and generational ill-gotten breeding. All other interpretations are childish, fairy, Babylon garbage interpretations for sissies. Anyone with even a basic understanding of history knew that if you weren't man enough to be a warrior during the time of Christ and to fight for what you believe, and it should still be this way, but people are acting like complete betas these days and nerds and so on and so forth. But if you weren't man enough, you were considered a baby. You need to man up and be an able-bodied man and fight for what's right versus be a Babylon, magic card, fairy, theater arts, psychology, coward. Pretty straightforward. That is the sissy, beta, outside the gates are the cowards interpretation. F, Proverbs 22:28-29 says, "Do not move an ancient boundary stone." So if the God is the same today, yesterday, and forever, and it's an ancient boundary stone, he must be a warrior, okay? Then Christ must be a warrior. And a martial art warrior, since it's a sharp double-edged sword of Scripture. And also tells us that one who is skilled in his work will serve before kings. They will not serve before officials of low rank. This must be considered as shedding light on and complementing Proverbs 18:9. One who is slack in his work is brother to one who destroys. You starting to see why they're changing my voice to try to make me sound like an Ebert Westerner, a social club or something? Or a token minority? Think about it. They've overkilled that I'm right by changing my voice. G, in John 10, Jesus says that his works reveal who he is, and if they do not believe him, at least believe the works, so that they will know that he isn't God and that God is in him. But remember, going back to Exodus 15:3, my first point A and point 4, was the Lord is a warrior, the Lord is his name. So If you do not believe me, believe my martial art works and my moral cause and my argument, so you know that I'm in God and God is in me, which will lead you back to believe in me. H. The hand of God's scriptures prove that I am right. And the history of white supremacy rules out the white and the Jews. Also, the fact that homosexuality is clearly a sin and a state of mind, no offense to the LGBT community and white and the Jews, so homosexuality is clearly a state of mind, a sin in a state of mind that does not allow for true and divine seriousness, means that we can rule out the LGBT community. In the Urban Dictionary, gay means stupid and pointless, and gay means happy. A warrior who's serious about being a moral warrior goes around, oh, giddy, oh, hi, guys. That's not the Spirit of God. If you don't understand that, my goodness, how far gone are you? With a similar methodology, we can rule out the other groups until it's just my family who produced me, and I am the last, and it is over, as one does not pick figs from thistles or thorn bushes. I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to skip to the next point. We can explore that in comments, but I'm sure you get it by now. Galatians 3:28 says that there is no Jew or Gentile, okay? That you're all one in Christ. So there's no Jew or Gentile. So we look everywhere. God judges in equity, Psalms. Galatians 4 says that Jerusalem in the sky is the true Jerusalem, not in the land, which is of this world and here on earth. Say Galatians 3:28, Galatians 4. J, in Matthew 21:43, the kingdom of heaven is said to be taken away from the Jews and given to one who will perform God's works in the New Testament. Okay, so we see that Nimrod, before Abraham was Nimrod. And Abraham and his people used to say things like Nimrod, a mighty warrior before the Lord. It was a proverbial saying. Genesis 10 makes that clear. Okay, so who will perform God's warrior works when the Jews, who are less warrior-like than the people whose language they altered to make an Afro-Asiatic language called, Hebrew. Okay, it's an African people that taught them what they know, and including spiritually, and also trained them in Egypt. And Moses was said to learn the ways of the Egyptians, including martial arts. Okay, so who's it given to? Obviously, we look first to Cush, because the mighty warrior, moral warrior spirit that goes beyond Martin Luther King. What is the source of Martin Luther King? Is it Europe? No, it's Africa. It's Nigeria. Blacker than black, blue black. And I'm not racist, I'm part white. I come from an African patriarchal line. All right. Which overkills that it's more than fair. Okay. K. Proverbs 34 tells us, the New Living Translation that is, that one who holds the wind in his fists, is God's son. That goes back to martial arts strikes. The most logical interpretation of it is that through martial arts strikes, the sun goes up to heaven and comes back down. So he says, who goes up to heaven and come back down? Who holds the wind in his fists? Okay? And it says, what is his name and what is his son? Surely you know. And it's Christ and God. And my name is Chukwuemeka. My Christian name is John. But I am Christ. Elijah is not referred to here as the word fists is used. This suggests that Elijah is also superimposed on the idea of the top martial artist, and the history of religion shows us that dishonest tricksters replace the martial art orders. Okay, so we see the sword that the king wore became something else. People use a magic wand, people use a stick and a staff, and so on and so forth. And we see the signs, the mace turning into a staff, and so on and so forth in various cultures, that we see that this kind of witchcraft people replace the martial art orders, and so on. We see that with the royal family of England, for example. You see the queen looks like a witch or something. That's not a coincidence. There is one martial arts order that is the best. Immature geeks have made movies like Highlander, which suggest that they have a desire to pretend that it is theirs. They say, we are the champions, and so on and so forth, and they want to pretend that they are the true champion of God, which is the top martial arts. Psalm 19 also makes that clear. Psalm 19, 1-5 tells us that the heavens declare the glory of God, and the skies proclaim the works of his hands. They also make it clear that the sun is a symbol of the bridegroom, and he is a warrior champion, as Psalm 18 makes it clear that God trained the king's hands for battle and to be a champion. Also, he says he keeps the light burning of the top martial arts, and he can advance against a troop. Read Psalm 18 many times. You'll see that I'm right. Take notes. Okay? And to be a champion. We can also tell that because the Bible is a pain to piece it all together, so it is not the authority on God, but I am the champion
and I'm the champion of the authority of God, right? In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God before the Bible was written. Revelation 1:16, warrior spirit reference, not nerd, playing warrior or mage or sage, etc. In his right hand he held 7 stars, and coming out of his mouth was a sharp double-edged sword. His face was like the sun, shining in all its brilliance. This takes us back to Revelation 19, which is an important chapter where it says that there was an angel standing in the sun. Jesus said in 1 John 51 that he